The problems with the scrapped home insulation scheme have been well documented, but only now has the full scale of the policy's failings been revealed. The Auditor-general's found the federal government program put stimulus ahead of safety. He says the Environment Department was overwhelmed and unprepared. The reports dragged the troubled scheme back into the spotlight just when the government's trying hard to regain control of the water debate. From Canberra, Susan McDonald reports.
It was meant to help insulate the nation from recession. Instead, the $2 billion government scheme led to fraud, deaths and, at last count, more than 200 house fires.
This scheme did become a mess, and that's why we brought the scheme to an end.
The Auditor-general has delivered his assessment and points to a department totally out of its depth. The report says the stimulus objective overrode risk management. It says difficulties overwhelmed the department and it was unable to recover. There were problems in nearly 30% of the roofs inspected. Of those with foil insulation, safety fears forced the removal of the foil in more than 1/3 of them. And on top of that, 4,000 cases of fraud were identified, with the full extent of the problem still not known.
Fraud, fire, failure on a massive scale, and above all else, contributed to the possible deaths of 4 beautiful young men.
We as a government, and I think those two in the public service, have worked through to learn the lessons here. And I welcome the Auditor-general's report because that will also assist both government and the public service to learn from this example and to avoid these kind of risks in the future.
But have you done enough then? Peter Garrett was demoted over the scheme. The opposition is now calling for him to be dumped from Cabinet altogether, even though the Auditor-general found his department's advice was overly optimistic and inaccurate.
Who couldn't be disappointed if there was advice that came through which was deficient? But at every step of the way, I took the advice that I received seriously.
But critically, the report reveals bureaucrats wanted to roll out the program over 5 years, and that a 5-year rollout was not accepted by the government as it did not meet the stimulus objective.
Was it the right thing for the government to do to respond in the way that it did to the global financial crisis? I believe that it was. Are lessons to be learnt? Clearly there are.
The clean-up is estimated to cost almost $500 million. 95,000 safety inspections are now complete, but the government won't say how many of those uncovered dodgy insulation.
Any figures that are produced from the 95,000 inspections that have been carried out to date are also not representative because they are...
As much as the government would like to move on from the insulation mess, the opposition is likely to pursue the matter when Parliament resumes next week. And as the government is picking up the pieces from the past, it's steeling itself for the battle that stretches ahead over water use in the Murray-Darling Basin. Following a dramatic day in the New South Wales town of Griffith, the Basin Authority had a less hostile reception in South Australia's Riverland. Nonetheless, it came across opposition to the proposed water cuts.
There's absolutely nothing in that draft plan that says we will have a more secure future.
In Canberra, water experts waded into the debate.
I think most of the economic orientation has been towards the production of food and fibre rather than the sorts of benefits we might gain from having more water in the environment.
The government's released figures showing some valleys have already achieved most of the recommended cuts through water buybacks, and ministers are offering words of assurance to nervous communities.
In the end, the government has to make the decision. It was never going to be a decision just for the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. It hasn't put out a plan, it's put out a guide. The government has to produce the plan, and it will do that based on serious consultations.
Burn the plan!
Taking the heat out of the debate won't be easy. Susan McDonald, Lateline.